All right. Welcome, everybody. It's good to be back again with you, Heather. And we also have Kim joining us, who's going to do a member spotlight. So it's good to be here.
Yeah, good to be here, Joe.
Yeah. So let's talk about what we're going to cover today. The format's going to be very similar if you're a regular listener. We're going to talk about the current events that have happened this week. We have our TV and movie quote of the week, where we're going to extract wisdom out of something we've watched. The excellent thing we've learned in the last week. Two truths and a lie, where we're going to try to stump each other. Like I said, Kim's going to be coming in and doing a spotlight on one of the members of our coaching program she coaches. And then finally, Heather will wrap up with the Woodard Report article of the week. All right, Heather, what are you seeing happening out there in the world?
So there was a press release that was issued last week by Intuit, our friends over at Intuit, that they have just become certified on the FedNow platform. And so what is the FedNow platform? It is a platform that allows you to get instant payments. So think Venmo, think PayPal instant transfer. And so we've been able to do some kind of instant transfer with QuickBooks. But there is a little bit of delay. This will be actually instantaneous. So you'll be able to send money directly to your vendors in real time. And so previously, Joe, the reason this is kind of significant, well, not kind of, big significant, is that we have a couple of vendors and apps that actually have kind of bridged the gap between the waiting period with QuickBooks payments, right? And instant payments or the real-time payments. And the big players that we know about are Forwardly and Melio. So the question is how much disruption is there going to be for them now that Intuit is going to be rolling out this instant payment option in the next few months?
Well, and of course, we could see this coming as they sort of went from a partnership with Melio into building out their own payment system. So I'm sure Melio's been in zero. It's just been waiting for the other foot to fall, But this is a really big development. And it also speaks to an economic shift too. A lot of these companies, part of their monetization model is to make money on the float. And so when you start taking that float out and you now put competitive pressure on the model that depends on the float, a lot of these companies that are giving away their solutions for free are going to have to start charging subscriptions. But since Intuit owns the platform, they can afford not to make money on the float and still include the payments at either a deeply discounted rate or included to then create disproportional competitive advantage. So based on this announcement, it's a really good time to be an Intuit shareholder, not a great time to be their competitor on the spend side. It's going to be interesting to see how it falls out.
Yeah. And I think this is just, the beginning, and it's not the beginning. We're in the middle of this. So to say it's beginning is not true, but we've seen this happen before. As you said, Joe, they had the open API, right? The developer program. They invited these tech developers to come in and create these innovations that work with QuickBooks. And now we're starting to see, as we did with Melio, them developing their own solutions and displacing these, the former partners, right? So we're going to continue to see that with other apps that we've known to, we've gotten to know and love as we start to see, this functionality become native to QuickBooks. So we want to keep an eye on that. And we definitely want to be paying attention because clients are going to be asking about these changes as well.
Yeah. And I think you're going to see, if you're out there and you're like using the ecosystem, first, they're not cutting off partners. So I don't want you to think that maybe you're going to lose some connectivity that you've enjoyed when you're depending on a system. It's just that they're going to more and more build competitive features within their platform.
Correct.
So it's kind of a both and approach. And if you love Melio, we have to remind you that you can get that embedded into Xero because it's all one part of one big happy family over there with Xero, Melio, and Sift. They're not the sponsors for today's podcast. It's just, I felt like I needed to say that too. If you're a big Melio fan, they did find a new good home.
And there is, and there's also lots of benefits to having an external AP provider that's outside of QuickBooks, especially for separation of duties. So I'm not saying that Melio is out at all. That was not, Melio totally not trying to say that. But what I'm trying to say is that it's going to change the landscape. So it's just
It's
something we need.
definitely changing the landscape. And
Right.
look,
Right.
they have a responsibility to their shareholders and their stakeholders, and they've got to protect share price.
For sure.
And the way you do that is with increased revenue streams, especially within your core, customer base, upsells. So new monetization models, the street really likes that.
Hmm.
And they're doing their fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders. They're acting as corporate America should act. And
100%.
where the elephant steps, you better be watching other developers just to make sure that, because they're not trying to squash you, they just step where they're going to step.
That's right.
And you got to be able to dodge that. We've been doing a little bit of that ourselves, haven't we? It's not just with Intuit, but just as you work with any big company, you got to
Yes,
watch where they're stepping.
you do.
All right. So in my announcement, Digit announces outcome-based pricing. So the reason this is such a big deal is not just because Digits is doing it, but because I believe it's the response to the SaaS apocalypse. So let's break it down one step at a time. First, Digits is standing behind the effectiveness of their platform with the money by saying, we will charge you only when our platform displaces X number of X amount of work, however they're measuring that to be done. If it's that there's over 90% of a close completion, or 100% of a close completion, or 100% displacement of a worker, I haven't unpacked the exact way they dissect it, but they're going to monetize so that you're really taking not a purchase of Digits as a software solution, but you're thinking, okay, if a human did this, it would cost me X. And if artificial intelligence through Digits does it, it will cost me Y. And Y is always significantly less than X. Now, this is not an aberration. This is an indicator. The market is headed in this direction. Already with Claude will do so much work, and then it stops doing it for free. You're going to have to pay Claude to do the work, and you do that by increasing your tokens. I saw a funny meme out on social media that was showing what Tony Stark was doing with his artificial intelligence in his basement. That's Iron Man for you non-Marvel fans. And the meme underneath the thing said, we could all be Tony Stark if we had unlimited tokens. So it's funny. Now, of course, that was 10, 15 years ago. So artificial intelligence has kind of caught up with the movie. The point is, artificial intelligence does not work for free, but it nonetheless does work. It performs tasks, and it displaces some effort-based work that humans used to have to do. And you're going to see this now manifest not as a software subscription, but as some compensation for its work. And it's a very inexpensive worker.
It is. And
the ripple effects of this are phenomenal.
no, they really are. And Joe, I think, 2 years ago when ChatGPT first it's 2.5 years ago now, when ChatGPT really hit the mainstream and you and I were on the podcast, I remember saying to people, be careful with your pricing model, right? If you are depending on AI as part of your business model, you've got to pay attention because it's not going to be cheap forever.
A toll is coming. Yes.
The toll is coming. And so you've got to be revisiting your pricing, and you've got to be thinking about my competitive advantage isn't that I'm using AI and I'm servicing clients at rock bottom prices. You've got to make sure that you are pricing at value so that as this value pricing comes along with the artificial intelligence, you're ready for it and it's not going to be disruptive to your bottom line.
The value add is that you're smarter, you're faster on your turnarounds, more real time, more responsive, especially to indicators you otherwise would not have the attention to pay attention to. And therefore price goes up when you deploy artificial intelligence, even if cost goes down. And then when they do start charging, the tokens, you've got the budget in there to work it.
Exactly.
And I don't see any universe where AI will ever come near the cost of a person. It's just as you're adopting AI, you're going to have to look at it like an extension of your human resources budget. You're going to have to pull out of there more and more as it's doing the work. And that's not to be, Chicken Little and say the sky's falling. You all have heard me say this before. It's not falling, but there are things falling from the sky. So you better look up. And if your competitors are taking a lot of the sort of the grunt work, the core admin work, and they're pushing that through bots and they're paying for it through tokens. They're getting that work done at a fraction, a single digit percentage of the cost you're paying for a human. And to keep up, to stay current, to stay competitive, and to modernize, then you would need to play the same game. And so if all of that seems strange to you, it should. That's the reason that we themed this year's Scaling New Heights, Strange New World. And Microsoft is coming to talk about this strange new world at Scaling New Heights. So don't miss it. Come see us this June in Orlando. Now it's time to move to the TV and movie quote of the week. All right, Heather, what have you been watching?
I got to tell you, Joe, I went to the movies. I don't go to the movies very often, but I went to the movies and I saw Project Hail Mary. It was fantastic. Loved it, loved it, loved it. So
before you proceed, any spoiler alerts for our audience, including me, because I haven't seen it. You're not going to spoil it, right?
I am not going to spoil it for you.
Okay, all right. Keep listening then, listeners.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
So I am going to tell you the premise of it. So it'll give you a little preview of the premise, but it's not a spoiler alert. So the whole premise of it is that the sun is being eaten by these organisms called astrophage, right? And our sun's going to be consumed and all life on Earth is going to die, and they know this. And so there's this doctor that's running this scientific initiative to stop these astrophages from eating our sun and killing everyone. So she's trying to convince the hero of the story, who is played by Ryan Gosling, who is amazing in the film, whose name is Dr. Grace, which I think is kind of cool, to embark on a suicide mission to figure out how to stop them. So the only way to stop them is to go out into space and figure out what's going on. And anyway, so she's talking about that. She explains that doing this is a total long shot and is almost doomed to failure, right? Because of the logistics of it. So he's saying, why would you possibly invest in it if it's most certainly going to fail? And her answer to him is the alternative is to just do nothing. And so my business takeaway is that doing nothing is still a decision. And what she was saying to Dr. Grace was, we have to at least try because we know the alternative. And so I think that as far as business and turning this into a business quote is like, we have these things that come at us and we can choose not to react, and sit on it and not make a decision. But by not making that decision, you're making a decision. And so if you're faced with a challenge, like a disruption, right? Doing nothing is basically making a decision that you're
going to do nothing. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the sayings that our regular listeners have heard me say. If you remain too long in indecision, your indecision becomes your decision. Except that here it's more proactive. You're actually deciding not to act, right?
That's right.
But so you can have a passive one, which is to remain in indecision, and inaction becomes your action. Or it could be to proactively choose not to act, right? But and they're a little more than two sides of the same coin. They're very nuanced. But here it sounded like that was the wake-up call.
Yes.
Doing nothing means that we die. Do you really want to decide to die? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I rewatched an old movie from the 1990s called A Man Without a Face. In the movie, there's a guy named McCloud. He's a complex hero of the story. He's disfigured from a car accident, and he's being judged by the local community. And there are all these backstories of how he got into the wreck and, all this gossip trail. And he's treated a little bit as sort of the troll that lives on the other side of the lake. Nobody knows anything about him. And he has, he's being confronted by the townspeople about something unrelated, and he's being judged incorrectly. And he says to the townspeople, "Is this what you see?" And he points at his disfigured, burned face. "Is this what you see? If you see this, you don't see me." And you probably have seen that dialogue so many times, but it just hit me so hard, especially in light of, I think, a lot of the surface judgments that are taking place right now in our society about our fellow Americans, about our visitors from other countries. We love to just see the surface. We love to see something that's imperfect about the surface. And then we love to just go all the way through to the judgment of the core of that issue or that person, based on the most cursory glances at the situation or at the person. It's a quick path to make the world make sense, but in the process, we're missing understanding and curiosity. So, I would encourage everybody listening, whether it's a client behavior that's too easy to judge, whether it's a client leadership strategy that's too easy to judge, get to what's underneath the surface behavior, seek understanding. Understanding will breed empathy, and empathy will give you a course to act. So
Yeah. I still remember when we had Daryl Davis come to Scaling New Heights back when we were in St. Louis. Was that 2023, I believe? And,
yes, I thought about him a lot when I was rewatching that. Yes. How
yeah.
can you hate me when you don't even know me? He says.
And his big takeaway during that keynote, Joe, was ask questions. That's the what's the word? The inoculator to judgment is to understand. And the only way to understand is to ask questions. So rather than,
Curiosity.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And that's what he did. He actually went to the members of the Ku Klux Klan, and you know the story, Heather, and
Yeah.
he asked questions. Why do you think this way? And then he
Right.
listened.
He
And
did.
eventually he was able to get the Grand Dragon, or whatever they call themselves, the head of several regional groups, to quit. And it dismantled that whole arm of the organization. He did it single-handedly just by being curious.
Yes.
And by loving them, if he doesn't love what they represent or how they think or feel.
Curious,
It's powerful.
curious and courageous. I mean, just very
Yes, curious and
courageous.
courageous.
Yes.
Yes. All right, let's now move to the excellent thing we learned. Heather, what did you learn this week?
I learned, so I've been tinkering as a team, Joe. Thanks to you, we've been tinkering in Claude. So we've been a Chat GPT and Copilot organization, and now we've kind of gone into exploring Claude a little bit. And so one of the things that I was really concerned about was like, wow, I've been using Chat GPT for 3.5 years, and now, I have to start over with Claude. No, you don't. Right? No, you don't. So there's a link to an article that walks you through how you can export your data from ChatGPT and import it into Claude, so you don't have to start over. And I thought that was a really excellent thing that I learned.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And documents and other things that you might have built, projects, a lot of that can be transferred in. And so mine is also a Claude excellent thing I learned, and we didn't orchestrate that, but I guess it's just we're all kind of absorbing Claude right now, so it makes sense. And I learned that Claude has the ability to learn skills, and they actually call it that. They call it an organizational skill. But the coolest thing about it is you don't have to program the skill into Claude. You just simply have a conversation with Claude, just as you would have a conversation with any new hire. So when I asked Claude to generate a Word document, it occurred to me Claude has no idea how to use our Word template, because you manage AI like you manage people. I can't expect a person I've never trained to use our template, never given access to our template, to now produce an output per our template. I'm going to have a policy, I'm going to have a document, and I'm going to probably have some sort of a guide on how to use this document that I would give a human. So I simply did that with Claude. I had it absorb our existing template, and then I told it what our policy and our approach was, and then I asked it to convert an existing document. And when it made mistakes, I simply, because that's what you do with humans, they come back with something imperfect and you train them on how to do it right. So when it made mistakes, I said, nope, this has the wrong footer. You need to use this instead. The title page is askew. You need to fix this. And every time it would go, I got it. I see the problem, and it would show me how it's working, just like having a conversation with a human. And then whenever it created a sample output that was correct, I said, now formalize this as an organizational skill and do it every time. And now I have no programming skills. I just had the conversation and I evaluated its work. But in the process of that, I've now trained it. And that organizational skill sits out in our organizational skill queue, and it says, Word document template adherence or whatever. And now it does it that way every single time. It's extremely easy to teach. All right, so let's move on to 2 truths and a lie. Okay, Heather, try to stump me.
All right. So mine is about, since we had tax season just ended, I thought that I would do 2 truths and a lie about the Form 1040. But here's the clincher, Joe. I'm going to switch it up a bit because I have 2 lies and a truth.
Oh, you
and
do?
You have to find the
Interesting.
truth. All right.
So you're going to make it a lot easier. All I have to do is spot one of the lies, or do I need to spot the truth?
You just have to spot the truth.
Oh, okay. All right. So I only still have a 1/3 chance of winning. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So thing 1 is Form 1040 was named after the original IRS individual income tax code section, which was section 1040. Okay. That was thing 1. Thing 2 is you can file a 1040 EZ if you only have income from W-2 wages. And thing 3 is Form 1040 was originally introduced in 1914.
Okay, so parsing the word only. So is it also true with thing 2 to say, if you only have income from W-2 wages, you can file a 1040 EZ? I don't want to get stuck on the parsing. If you only have income from W-2 wages, you can file a 1040 EZ. Is that what you mean?
You can file a tender if you only yes. If you only have
then
income,
that is the truth.
Okay.
Then that is the truth.
I stumped you. 1040
You
EZ.
did how? I mean, if you only have W-2 wages, because it's which box is on the W-2s, I bet you.
No. They got rid of the 1040 EZ. In 2017 was the last filing year that you could file a 1040
See, now that really
EZ.
wasn't yeah. And I haven't done tax preparation since 2013. So, there's no way I would have known that.
So,
all right,
thing 3 was the truth. Thing 3 was the truth. The Form 1040 was originally introduced in 1914.
I was going to go with that because that was when they, created the tax code. But
Form 1040 was the sequential. That was false because it was sequential. So they were naming the forms 1, 2, 3, 4, and they got to 1040, and that's how it got its name.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So the tricky little question in the middle, that was a trick question, but you did stump me. Okay. So I'm going to do mine as 2 truths and a lie. So you have to spot the lie. IBM released the first PC in the late 1970s. That's number 1. The first Apple computer was made of wood. That's number 2. And Apple's first logo featured Isaac Newton sitting under a tree. That's number 3.
I think that I'm stuck on. I think thing 2 that I think the Apple computer was made out of wood. So I do believe that that's true. The IBM released the first PC in the late 1970s. I kind of think that that's the lie because I know from studying innovation that, things come out and they're not adopted, right? So I think that's the lie. I'm going to go with that one. Is that IBM released?
That is correct. PC. 1981 was the first PC released by IBM. Good call.
Thanks.
Yes. All right. Let's move on now to the member spotlight. Kim, which member are we talking about today?
Thanks again, Joe and Heather, for having me back on the podcast. So today I'd like to feature Essential Bookkeeping Solutions with the team with Don, Amberly, and Del Rey. And you talked about pricing and value. Well, guess what? We're going to be talking about that today with our member spotlight as well. Because it's been interesting, their journey, not only just, to change these things that give more value, but to look at it from both an operational and a mindset capability. How do we really change the culture? And so I think it's really interesting what they've been doing around these 3 topics I'm going to talk about. So the first one is they've established a minimum baseline and additional pricing tiers. So this is really important for their operational impact. And then the way that they've been better able to plan their team's capacity and protect their time. So they've reduced the underpriced work, which is huge, and they get to pull, right? They get to focus on the higher value service now. So their recurring revenue is more predictable, which helps them make stronger decisions, and they look forward more than in the rearview mirror.
So by
really important.
baseline, do you mean that there's a price baseline or a nature of work baseline?
I think both, actually,
Okay.
which is really interesting, right? Because they're really looking more at the nature of the work that they're doing, and then they're associating a true value to that, and that's where the pricing comes in.
Nice.
Yeah, absolutely. So the cultural mind shift that they've had to go through for that, right, is they've leaned into the alignment over the volume, that not every client is meant to be their client. And that's such a huge thing, because we talk about really focusing on ideal client and who we're meant to work with. And it's okay if we have to say, we're just not a right fit. You belong with somebody else. And that's actually doing a better service to the client than if we keep them on and it's not a good fit for us.
Yep.
So the pricing right is now a reflection of the true value and expertise they bring. So not something that they just, fit to every situation. And the team feels more confident because they're upholding those standards that they support sustainability for both them and their clients. Mm-hmm. So huge thing. The second thing I want to touch on today is the increased confidence in holding the boundaries on pricing and addressing that scope creep, right? So they've reduced the unpaid and unplanned work, so protecting capacity. The scope creep has been addressed. It's addressed earlier and more consistently, which is huge. And so the clients are getting a more consistent experience. So the team has grown more confident again with giving the honest, value-based conversations. So that's huge. They're not doing just the everyday data entry. They're really starting to think more like advisors. So there's a strong understanding that protecting the scope will protect both the team and the client experience. So huge. They're going from reactive to proactive, and that's really their word for 2026. I really
like what you said there. If we see scope creep as protecting the client as much as it protects us, we're going to be a lot more prone to do it. And it does protect them because it creates a sustainability to the model. It creates those carving out of capacity because we're staffed properly to the work that we're doing. Sustainability is value for the client. Attention and capacity are value for the client. And those all come when your pricing is protected.
100% agreed. Absolutely. And then the third thing I wanted to feature is they've implemented a central client port. Now, I think this is everybody's, doing this. And so, but this is so pivotal for them because they were trying a bunch of different things and they finally landed. And it's hard in the world of AI, the ever-changingness that we talk about. But they've reduced the fragmented communication across all of these different platforms, and they're settling in one home. And so there's better visibility into their client request, where everything stands, that the workflow, all of that. And I think sometimes we take that for granted, right? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times we think, well, this is our way, this is our process, but does the process make sense from a client standpoint and from a team standpoint? So they're really starting to look at keeping all of the communication in one place and really guiding and encouraging their clients to use this one space. And again, holding the boundaries. You've got to reteach sometimes.
Yes.
And it's important to do that.
And you've got to make adherence to systems on the part of you and the client table stakes. If they don't do it, then they're just no longer a good fit to be a worker in your firm or a client in your firm. And now you don't do that overnight, but you make that part of your ideal client profile, and you evaluate every year. Is this client paying us on time and they're paying us well and we're priced right, but we're chasing them down for documents and exhausting ourselves with that process? That's right. Are they disruptive by their lack of adherence to process? And you'd have the same conversation with team members. They care, they're loyal, they're great, but they don't follow our process and it's creating constant friction. You coach to it, you put in a performance improvement plan, and then they're out. Process adherence is table stakes. I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I think they've really switched, right, from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. And that's the underlying factor, I think, in all of this. You really have to change that mindset in order to do any of this kind of work.
Because if not, fear takes over. If I don't accept this client, then I'm not going to have enough money. If I fire this client, then I'm not going to have enough money. If I let this team member go, then I'm not going to be able to get the work done. If I
That's
don't
right.
hire this person that I know is not really a good fit, then I'm not going to get the work done. These fear-based, scarcity-based thought processes actually are self-fulfilling prophecies.
100%.
And I'm glad that they're avoiding that.
Me too.
Heather, do you have something to add?
I do. I mean, where my brain, you know me, I'm a process lady. So,
Yes, you are.
where I go is the process. And you kind of touched on that of like getting the team ready first, right? Is the communication with the team of this is the mindset of our organization. This is, embedding that in that culture. So that empowers the team, the team members to educate the clients and hold the line on those boundaries, right? So understanding the process that yes, it starts with leadership, but then you have to empower your team, and you've got to make sure your team feels really, really comfortable, and that whole value mindset is embedded in everything they do before you roll it out to the client. Because if you don't, then you end up with team members that feel not supported, right? And they don't know what to say. And so I love how you kind of set that up for folks. So I think that's really important, is the order in which you do it is just so incredibly important.
100% agree. So they're doing some awesome things at EBS, and I'm really excited to focus on them today.
Yeah, well, kudos to all of you at EBS, and thanks for being a member. Thank you, Kim, for coaching them so well.
Thank you.
All right, it's time to wrap up, Heather, and we do that by you picking your favorite article of the week. What did you pick this week?
Actually, it just ties in so perfectly with what Kim just talked about as far as pricing and holding the line. So it's an article called Why Accountants Undercharge Without Realizing It. And it was written by one of our friends over at Anchor, Elad Smilovich. And he breaks down how we end up in this situation, how we actually end up not charging our clients for the work that we're doing. And it's usually by us trying to overserve our clients, right? So he breaks down the areas that we should be paying attention to as how we're supporting our clients. And then he talks about how you can restructure your pricing to make sure that you are creating those boundaries and holding your clients to them.
So it's a great compliment to everything that we just covered with Kim on what EBS is up to. So go read that article. You can find a link to that in the listening guide at woodard.com/podcast, or you can search for it at woodardreport.com. Well, Heather, that is the end of today's podcast episode. I appreciate everybody for listening, and it's been great to talk with you and with Kim as well.
See you next time, everyone.